Big Macs became the latest symbol of a tariff showdown between the U.S. and Canada. Yesterday, Premier Scott Moe posted a picture of the famous fast food on social media. Moe says the hamburger relies on potash, and tariffs imposed by the U.S. would cause the price to rise for Americans. Is the message getting through to known Big Mac aficionado Donald Trump? Well, we'll ask Murray Mandryk. He writes a political column in the Regina Leader-Post, and Murray joins us now. Good morning, Murray.
Good morning.
So, Murray, do you think Moe's Mac message is making a mark?
I don't think that Donald Trump is a big follower of Scott Moe's Twitter feed.
Okay.
So I don't think that it's going – but it's good for domestic consumption. And maybe that's what we need right now in another way. In terms of the American market, Scott Moe's already rejected having ads in bus stations in Chicago and everything else, mocking the NDP for suggesting it. So this isn't meant for Donald Trump, really. I'm not sure kind of who it really is meant to. I think it's still a good message for us locally, because I don't think there's still enough people rallying around the notion of how badly these tariffs might hurt, what they might do. I think Scott Moe actually has to speak to the far right in this country, because the success of this particular message is going to get everybody. It means getting everybody on side, including those who are Buffalo Party, United Party. You're seeing them online talking about the 51st state might not be a bad idea, and some of them are very familiar conservative voices. That now some of them are extreme and rather idiotic, but nevertheless, those are the people that I think Scott Moe has to speak to before their message starts to resonate. That somehow this could be a good thing. I don't think that'll be the case. I think you're seeing with Pierre Poilievre basically standing beside flags right now and everything else that Scott Moe will take his cue from others in terms of this particular message. I'm not particularly sure who this message on the Big Mac was meant for, but I actually don't think it's a bad one. I think it reinforces a lot of the reasons as to why Trump is down in Washington.
Another thing we saw on social media and Scott Moe's feed is something we've seen in the past, which is meeting with various ranking officials, senators, governors, also in this case some cabinet ministers, cabinet members in Donald Trump's cabinet. It's hard to tell with these trips always, and I know I've asked about this in the past, but what do you think the impact of this trip is? And it doesn't matter that all premiers were down there, including Scott Moe.
Well, I think a lot of the ranking's the operative, because I don't think a lot of these people, the former North Dakota government, ranks all that much in terms of Donald Trump's mindset. I think Donald Trump would have a hard time remembering who he appointed and who he didn't. So it's so isolated, and Donald Trump seems to react from the gut every time he makes a decision. He's not taking advice from anybody, but he will react to events. And if events such as stock market crash, falling in the polls, start to become problematic for him, he's going to react. And maybe that's the message, that if you have any personal relationship of any kind that Scott Moe and the other premiers need to be delivering to these people, this hurts you politically, and this will hurt you politically in the long term after Donald Trump is gone, and it'll hurt America in the long term. And I think maybe that's probably one opportunity, but this is not about this. We had to go there to send a firm message that this is not on. I don't know if the whole notion of the 51st state not being on resonated as much as it possibly could. There was a fair bit of bite back from the deputy chief of staff of Donald Trump's, basically saying that take Trump seriously. But I don't necessarily think that the war is going to be won on this one particular trip, or the Mexican leg, which I'm not 100% sure what the purpose is, other than to create allies and to create people to another country in the same boat that will support you. Generally, I think it's a worthwhile trip, but as we criticize for government spending and other things that they do, but I don't think there should be any expectations that this is going to change a tremendous number of minds in the U.S. that are important, and certainly won't change Donald Trump's minds whether you post a Big Mac or not.
You mentioned this, the impact of the tariffs and the financial impact we could see in Saskatchewan, and we're expecting to see a new budget sometime next month, and maybe about a month exactly. But this week we saw the government spend nearly $1 billion in special warrants, and this has become a bit of a tradition in recent years with you and I covering this. What's happening here with these special warrants?
Well, tradition is normally something you look forward to, so I don't think an extra $1 billion that they couldn't account for. This is hugely problematic. We're not getting square answers, and that's the frustrating part for the public, for journalists, for others. The answer that we're getting, we see special warrants, by the way, all the time because unexpected things come up during the budget cycle each year that they didn't account for, and you have to adjust your spending. This is a big adjustment, $923 million. We only spent $20 billion, so that's basically 5% with one fell swoop of the pen. Not a press release, not nothing until the NDP kind of raise it by seeing orders in council, which is of interest to political staffers and journalists like us, but very few other people see. Now, asked about this, the government communication put out a statement, and they're offering the notion that no, you are actually seeing some of this because it's in relation to crop insurance and other spending that we just didn't get around to basically signing the order, and it won't have an effect to the bottom line. I guess we'll see because we're not seeing a third quarter statement, and we won't until the budget. I'm not 100% sure we have a firm budget date yet. It'll be in March sometime. But I don't know if I necessarily take their word for it, and here's why. Another $500 million almost of this $923 million is related to health care. And that's an important number. The healthcare budget actually was only supposed to go up, according to the midterm statement, $100 million, which is a small amount. But if it's related to healthcare, which the government acknowledged, if it's related to government contract settlements, including the teacher settlement, which the government somewhat acknowledged in terms of this, I cannot actually believe that this is something that squares with the notion that this doesn't affect a deficit that's already risen at the mid-year part, $500 million compared to what they presented last March. It's been long-standing tradition, speaking of long-standing traditions, of having a post-election budget that doesn't necessarily reflect anything in terms of what was presented before people went to the vote, followed by another budget that isn't good news to correct all the problems that we have. And this is a bad time right now for governments, and particularly the Saskatchewan government, to be correcting anything because, as we've talked about, we have problems down in the United States. This trade war will eventually cost us money, maybe not immediately, but down the road. So there is a lot of things that's going on right now behind the scenes that aren't terribly favorable for Premier Scott Moe's government.
You touched on this a bit, but this is the question that comes up every year. And when we see these special warrants and the money for healthcare that comes in right before the budget, do budgets matter as much as they used to when the government is spending throughout the year, even when we're not sitting, when the ministers and the MLAs aren't around?
Well, this is interesting. The NDP actually raised that and say, what's the point of having a budget? It's become a bit farcical. And of course, opposition say outrageous things to get people more outraged. But there is some legitimacy to the question of if we can't account for this money, if we can't so much as put out a press release saying we're spending this money and here's how, and have a better explanation as to how it's spending, how do we account for budgets? Why aren't we seeing a third quarter update after an election that we should be seeing? By the way, the numbers were in on January 1st, so this isn't something that is new or that we should be waiting on. They love to surprise us on budget day and overwhelm us with a lot of stuff, so we'll forget whatever happened last year in the third quarter, et cetera, or why last year's budget doesn't seem to be terribly balanced, and proceed next on with the following budget. And that's problematic because it doesn't afford good accounting. I think they think it's effective communications and public relations, but it just makes people that much more cynical about things like that. I think a better explanation is, look, here's what we're spending the money for. And they do have some good explanations about the Prince Albert Hospital, about other things, about breast cancer, other issues that are really kind of important. They have a story to tell in terms of what this money can go for. Tell that story and let the people judge.
Murray, thanks so much.
You're very welcome.
And that's my political Valentine there, Murray Mandryk.
That is sad.
Murray writes a political column in the Regina Leader-Post, and he was part of our weekly panel. If you have thoughts on what Murray had to say, what we discussed, send us an email, morningedition@cbc.ca.